This is a process that has been done earlier up in Hartford, and Hartford has this incredible model called GIA, whereby area churches and clergy have been able to mobilize to do some really powerful and incredible things as communities of faith. So Bill is going to talk to us a little bit about that. But with that, I'll simply say thank you to Susan, and thank you for all of your work and all of your leadership to make this process come together. So thanks, Susan.
Well, Steve has, he's done a great job outlining what this is all about, so I can skip my first 5 slides.
Oh, no.
Actually, FCCOL has a long history of building, and I'm going to just go to the next slide. We're not building Legos this time, but this church has built teepees on the front lawn. It has built box houses on the front lawn. It's done affordable housing, senior housing, Habitat for Humanity, a major good vet house, and we also, as Steve was outlining today in our sermon, has deep and long relationships with communities across the globe. The Cheyenne River Reservation, Beth Sahor in Bethlehem, South Africa, Haiti, New Orleans, and Cuba. So we know about building relationships, long and deep relationships. And this particular type of faith-based organizing is all about relationship building, long and deep relationships, both within the congregation and across congregations. Some people have said, we're in the middle of this and we're building the plane and trying to fly it at the same time. Who is doing this? There are 14 houses of worship across Southeastern Connecticut that are doing this. There's Baptists and Catholics, Episcopalians, Lutherans, Methodists, AMEers, UCCers, UUers, and more. Now, I know you're not going to be able to read this slide, but it's our current congregations. We have folks in Norwich, New London, Gales Ferry, here in Oline, a number of congregations in New London. There's one Catholic church called Brendan the Navigator that has one pastor but 3 congregations. St. Mark's Episcopal in Mystic, St. Mary's Catholic Parish in Norwich, and another church in Norwich, St. Peter and St. Paul Catholic Parish. We had a meeting last week and invited clergy from the whole area to learn more about this, to get more congregations on board. I think we had about 10 representatives from different churches that were there. We're also reaching across the Connecticut River to Essex, Deep River, Chester, and there's 5 congregations that we're talking to over there. So it's growing. So why are we doing this? And it's, if ever there was a time, it's right now. I don't know how many of you went yesterday to King's Day, King's events around Connecticut. We went up to Hartford. It was so incredibly powerful. I know there were people in Guilford and all over. And I don't know how you felt, but it was like, wow, we're in this together. We have to make a change. We have to speak up. We need to stand up. And this is what this model helps us do. So it's to create systemic change in Connecticut. Can folks hear me? Yes. Okay, great. And let me just say, I should start off this way. It's not just me that's doing this. We have this team of 5 people, and I'd like to hold up Mariette Brown. She's not here today. She had surgery on Friday, so please send her a prayer for recovery and healing. John Higgins is part of the team. He couldn't be here today as well. Rick Strickard, Rick, where are you?
Thank you.
All right, he's Rick. And Kathy Sublin is also part of the team. So, you guys, this is a group process. It's not just me. So, it's all about relational work. We're not going to get into the details of all of it today because we're going to have some other sessions in January. But it's about one-on-one relationship building, which Steve mentioned about the Sacred Bowl conversations. We've had a sense of what that is like. But also something called group meetings or church meetings where we come together and share about stories in our lives, experiences that keep us up at night, items that really are on our heart and on our soul. And as we start to share those issues bubble up, and we start to say, wow, my issue is this person's issue, both in the church and outside the church. And right now, there's a hell of a lot of issues. So this is really important work. One of the people from our group, a minister by the name of Reverend Isaiah McCordle, he's from Walls Clark Temple, AME Zion Church. And last week, when he stood up to talk about why was he part of forming a faith-based community organizing group, he shared these words. And I texted him and said, could I share these words with the congregation, because what he said was so powerful, and I felt like he was saying what needed to be said and heard by all of us. So he said, why are my colleagues and I forming a faith-based organization? He said it can be summed up in one word: power. Not the power the way the world understands it, not power the way governments recklessly practice it, not the power that thrives on domination, exploitation, oppression, or colonization. Not the kind of power that demands I step on my neighbor's back just to get ahead. Not the power that allows the rich to get richer while the poor are pushed further into poverty. Not the power that widens the gap between the haves and the have-nots, nor the power that continues to perpetuate isms and phobias. We are pursuing collective power, the kind that ensures every community has agency, dignity, and opportunity. The kind of power that makes sure there is clean water, fresh air, and safety for every child in every neighborhood. The kind of power that helps communities thrive through livable wages, affordable housing, and accessible health care. The kind of power that reminds America of what Dr. King challenged in his first speech, I've been to the mountaintop, live up to what you have on paper. This is collective power that comes from God. Power that equips our congregations with the tools for discipleship that bring both spiritual renewal and social transformation. Power that brings together all faith traditions to labor for justice, liberation, and freedom for all people. Power that not only speaks truth to power, but acts in the strength of that power. And that's why he said, I'm here. So I think he said it so beautifully, probably better than any of us. So that's why we're here, to create systemic change. In Connecticut, this church has a long tradition of doing justice work, doing mission work. I got in line to say, well, look at all the programs and projects that we do. We give to 75 different missions throughout the year, which is incredible. We also have done periodic legislative work, standing up for making systemic change. But this is really all about joining together to create a power base with other congregations so we start to take action. So how are we doing this? We're copying others. That's why we invited Bill here today to talk about the Greater Hartford Community Action Alliance, which has been doing this work since, I believe, 2019. Is that right? And here to tell us all about it is Bill. And Bill, if you want to come on up, that'd be great. He's a member of First Congregational Church in Simsbury, First Church of Christ. He is a retired ELCA minister. He started this program. He's done it twice with two congregations. The first one with Christ the King Lutheran Church in Windsor, when you were the minister there, correct? And now with First Church of Christ Simsbury, where he's a member. So he's co-chair of his core team at Christ Church, and we're really glad you're here, so thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, let's watch a video that we put out at Ingy a couple of years ago around our founding, but I think it'll give you a good idea about what the Greater Hartford Interfaith Action Alliance is all about.
By affirmation, In 2019, the Christian Activities Council, now the Center for Leadership and Justice, extended invitations to houses of faith throughout Greater Hartford to explore establishing a broad-based justice initiative for churches, synagogues, mosques. GIA, the Greater Hartford Interfaith Action Alliance, was born out of the need to address social justice issues in our local community.
It doesn't matter if you're from Simsbury or Avon, or from Hartford or East Hartford or West Hartford. Everyone has particular issues going on in their communities, and how we get to those issues is by building that relational power.
The goal was to build a diverse organization of lay leaders and clergy unbound from constraints of race, class, gender identity, religion, and geography to carry out justice work in ways that engage issues at an institutional and root level.
May our eyes remain open to the injustices we see all around us. May we charge forward with our feet to October 28th, our official founding as the Greater Hartford Interfaith Action Alliance.
Shalom, my name is Eileen Frank. I'm with Congregation Beth Israel in West Hartford, and I am here with 118 people.
I really think that the work of GIA has made the congregation more aware. Because GIA has really awakened everyone's eyes to systemic racism, really has challenged us to move beyond charity into justice work.
Mr. Pat Spear serves as GIA's mentoring organizer and works with congregations who form core teams to receive leadership training on the principles of organizing, such as the difference between charity and justice.
Our congregations are fundamentally organized to reward a constant flow of social service delivery in the form of food pantries, clothing centers, backpack ministries that do nothing to bring about a change in the root causes of why our kids are hungry or in need of shelter or in need of a backpack ministry or in need of clothing. The basic ground of GIA and its success is that we're just helping the religious institutions in the region do what they're supposed to do, right? And then giving them the tools to do it.
When I tell people I train leaders in my community, people all automatically assume, okay, so they are going to get into some sort of power position. No, they're just identifying the power that already exists within them, and they're really trying to figure out where can they take that power and what can they do with it.
Did you know, and I'm asking you because I did not know, that Connecticut is one of only 2 states in the entire country, New York is the other, which forces recipients receiving public assistance like welfare to pay it back, even if it means losing their home.
The problems that may plague cities do have an impact on suburbs, and it affects us spiritually. It affects the quality of our relationships. It leads us in the suburbs to kind of look inward as opposed to looking outward. If we're not organizing, I'm not sure how we demonstrate that we care about our neighbors.
As a result of congregations organizing together through GIA, welfare liens were repealed for the entire state, releasing thousands of people from an unjust debt. We were able to create this structural change through relationships.
For the families who've had welfare liens on their homes, many will finally have equity.
Relationships are the fundamental block of how we create and develop power. If there is no relationship, there is no change.
That's the beauty, the benefit, the gift of organizing. It's not just cutting issues and winning issues, which is important. It's not just the building power, which also is extremely important, but it's also rooted in deep relationality and deeply getting to know one another and trusting that the other person is worth being known.
We are GIA.
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 morning to all of you. I bring you greetings from your sisters and brothers at First Church in Simsbury. I'm a musician, so I'm going to use this mic. And the core team that's there, but also the members of that church who understand themselves as being part of the greater Hartford Interfaith Action Alliance. I want to read a little bit more about, there's some things up here. You notice that some of those don't look like they match. That's because I've had to update that board about 5 times about the things that we are doing. And, so you invited a preacher to be here this morning, so I'm going to start with a short passage of Scripture just to ground us from Paul's letter to the congregation in Colossia that says, "As God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Bear with one another, and if anyone has a complaint against another, forgive each other, just as you have been forgiven by the Lord, so you must also forgive." So did you hear those words? I'm going to say them, you say them back to me. Compassion. Kindness. Humility. Meekness. Patience. And forgiveness. Yeah. So I'm going to riff on your pastor here this morning and do a little bit of remembering in my family that I hadn't thought about before that you were preaching this morning, so I appreciate this. And it's some words of liberation. So my family and the founders were Ingemar and Elmer Johnson, who came over from Sweden in the 1840s because they wanted to leave the church, but the state church that was in Sweden, because they felt constrained. My great-great-great-grandfather was a church musician, and when he came over in the 1840s, he wanted the liberty of worshiping in congregations in the United States, and not a state church. And their gift to my family, as we hold on and remember it, is because they were abolitionists in the 1840s and 50s and 60s in Iowa, of all places. But that was one of the places where people who were enslaved in the South could come north and find a safe haven, and then most of them went on to Canada, because that was the safest haven. That all got passed down for a couple of generations to my parents. My mother, Donalene Sundstrom White, some more Swedes in there, and then my dad, Jim White. And my father was a pastor in the city of Chicago. And Mom and Dad got involved when the sanitation workers were getting organized. My dad was a pastor, my mother was a nurse, and it's not because they were sanitation workers, but it was because Martin Luther King Jr. was giving a vision about organizing in the 20th century. And that we could organize for power, they could organize for power. My parents were on that walk where famously Dr. King had a brick thrown at him and it hit him in the head. And they said, "You should stop." And he said, "I can't stop." And he completed that walk, and I could spend the morning telling you about my parents' activism in the 1960s, but that's not what we're here to talk about. But I want to tell you that because those are stories of liberation that are woven into the tapestry of my family. And so when I got the opportunity to put these fruits of the Spirit, of kindness and compassion and humility and meekness and patience and forgiveness into action with Gia, I said yes. As Susan said to you, I was serving a congregation as their pastor, and Gia came, Pat Spear, just like the people here, came knocking on my door and said, "Would you want to get involved with this?" And then some of my sisters and brothers in fellow congregations in the area said, "We're going to do this. Please come and join us." I think I got on board for the second meeting of what became GIA. And we were forming just the way you are. Just that list of congregations that were there. We were getting a sponsoring committee of clergy and some church leaders to make something and imagine something that hadn't happened before in Greater Hartford. We had a Hartford Conference of Churches that then turned into the Christian Activities Council, got a fancier name, and then, but now it's become the Center for Leadership and Justice because it's an interfaith organization. That might not be something that you've been part of before. I see that there's at least a UU church, maybe there'll be a temple or a mosque, but now we're 53 congregations in Greater Hartford. We have 2 mosques, and I think 12 synagogues, and all the rest are churches of every stripe. That's a powerful coalition of people. I can tell you that just a few weeks ago, there was some people who didn't have documentation to be in the United States, but were working and contributing to our society and had come here for the same kind of thing that my ancestors came here for some liberation in their life. And they were taken by ICE in Newington, Connecticut, where my wife happened to have grown up. And within 3 days, GIA had organized people in Greater Hartford, and there was 500 people. The mayor of that town, Senator John Larson, some state representatives that came to speak, as well as 3 bishops, 2 rabbis, and the pastor of the UCC church, whose lawn where we held this rally. 500 people in 3 days. That's the power that people have to make a difference when they're organized together and when they see each other as doing the work of hope and liberation and freedom in our country today. It is holy work. It's not political work. Even though we're going into the halls of politics to talk with people about it, it is holy work, and we understand that together. And I hope if you're thinking this morning, do I want to do that kind of work? Do I want to become part of this core team? I hope you're thinking and knowing that this is holy work. This is a calling. Do you want to step out of your comfort zone maybe and imagine that you and people from other congregations in your area could somehow band together and make a difference? And one of the most powerful differences that came up in that is welfare liens. Did you hear that? That we used to put liens on people's property after they got out of the systemic system of churning people's lives through welfare, and then we asked them to pay the state back. Finally on their feet, buy a home, buy a car, have some money in the bank, and then the lien comes. We were one of 2 states in the United States that still held on to that in 2019. But by 2020, even in the midst of the pandemic, that law was repealed. And you know what was really amazing is that when we went to the legislators about this, they said, we didn't even know that was happening. I didn't either. Most of the clergy in Greater Hartford didn't know it either. And we didn't know that we were one of only 2 states, by the way, New York has since repealed theirs, that this was still happening. We have so much to learn. What are the things, Susan listed some things, some other things were listed actually in worship today. Some of the things that you're doing charitably through your church community. What are some of the things? I heard backpacks, right? So what are some of the other things?
Soup kitchen.
Soup kitchen?
Food pantries.
Food pantries?
Homeless hospitality.
Homeless hospitality?
Immigration ministry.
Immigration ministry? So did you do that through Iris or?
We work with Iris and many teams were agreeing.
Amazing. Other people? Can anybody else think of anything else? You've done mission trips. You have relationships with faith communities across the world. I was like you. Food banks, clothing banks, backpacks, shelters, soup kitchen, job, education and support, mental health groups, AIDS epidemic care and support, Habitat for Humanity, mission trips, more and more and more things. You get the idea. And some of those do, I've been involved with Habitat since 1989. Some of those do get at systemic change. Habitat one family at a time, right? I'll tell you one story that's kind of fun. I took the youth group from our church to the clothing bank in the town in Manchester, and I was serving there. And we found out that the one thing that you can't get at a clothing bank is, anybody know? Underwear. Somebody knew that. I didn't know that until I got there with a bunch of teenagers. We thought underwear, and it became this kind of fun thing for us to think about how could we get our congregation to bring underwear to church. Future sermons, Steve, or the other clergy that are in the room, you can preach about underwear some Sunday. I can tell you I had a great, joyful sermon about underwear. And guess what? We filled an entire old-fashioned station wagon with underwear, brought it to the clothing bank. And that church, for many years, gathered underwear. And they said, what kind of underwear do you need? And it said, whatever yours is. That's the size of people, because people who are in need of clothing aren't one size, are they? They're us, just in different circumstances. And so when somebody came to me and said, we're going to go, all those charitable things are important, and churches and synagogues and mosques are going to continue to do them, but we want to go beyond that. We want to get at the root causes of these things. Did you hear that in the video? Root causes. Systematic change. What do those things mean? It means we need to take the power of many congregations together and all the people that make up those congregations and take that into the halls of what we think of as the halls of power, which is politics, but actually we are the halls of power. We are the halls of power. We together, when we can get 1,000 people, that's the truth, 1,000 people one time to the Capitol to talk about welfare liens, that grabbed the attention, especially since we let our legislators know in all of these towns and cities that are Hartford and beyond that we were coming and that we wanted to talk about welfare liens. And we were there for the public conversation about that. One of my favorite experiences was one of the earliest ones that I had with GIA, and that was when I got to know Natalia. We were in the Arsenal Apartments, which were owned by a slumlord from New York City named Emmanuel Koo. And we were going around and we were interviewing people. We were doing one-on-ones. We were trying to build relational power so that we could help those apartment buildings organize together so that they could stand up together and stand up against the landlord. I knew nothing about what I was doing. And so I just knocked on Natalia's door, said, I'm here with this faith-based organization, and we're trying to just meet people and see if you could tell us what your living conditions are all about. And I went into her apartment, and she had 3 boards, not this big, but you know, the white ones that you have, about sanitation, about the mouse infestation problem that they were having, and about the danger that their children had. Pictures, mouse trappings in bags. She was organized already. She was waiting for me because she already had the power to know that what was going on was wrong, but she didn't know how to stand up to the powers that be. And quite honestly, at that point, I didn't know either. But luckily, we had people like Corey Mackey, and who's our executive director, and A.J. Johnson, the pastor that you saw up here, and Pat Spear, who came here, who's been doing community organizing for 40-plus years in Connecticut. They came, and they knew how to organize that community of people And one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had with Gia was being in the room with someone from Emmanuel Ku's organization, his manager in Hartford, HUD, who was giving them $2 million a year from Housing and Urban Development, federal organization. And on our side of the table, we had tenants. But over here, there was the mayor of Hartford, the police chief of Hartford, and the fire chief from Hartford, who had all been brought in to the organizing, and all of those people told the story that Natalia showed me in her apartment. And Emmanuel Ku was kicked out, pushed out as a landlord, and it was those buildings were sold to a Connecticut landlord who made a difference in their lives. Can you imagine that kind of organizing to make a difference in people's lives? They had the power, but they didn't know, I didn't know at that point how to bring it out. I was building a core team at my church in Windsor at that time, and I was building then helped build a core team at the church where I retired to. So my wife, a member of the UCC, her grandfather, a pastor in the UCC, we went from having 3 or 4 people, like you do at the beginning, who came to some meetings. Then we grew to 9. And believe it or not, during the pandemic, because we continued to be active online, now we are 16 on our core team. In a congregation probably about your size or maybe a little bit smaller. We found other people who have busy lives, like many of you, probably already serving on some committee, to build a core team to make a difference in people's lives. I want to tell you one more story, though. Because all this sounds like you win every time, right? I was part of a gun lobbying group that worked with gun lobby groups around, and we organized through GIA and all these gun lobby groups. It was all over the state, and we went from $3,000 in the state budget to $3 million in the state budget to $20 million in the state budget. Another big win for GIA, but the one that I did the last time, this past year, was called Just Cause. Anybody hear about that law or that legislation? At least one other person in the room. This is organizing people who are renters. What percentage of the people in Connecticut do you think rent? 5%? 10%? 20%? Yeah. One third of the people in Connecticut rent. Landlords do not have to have just cause at the end of your lease to ask you to leave. They may want to renovate your apartment or renovate all the apartments in the building, and to do that. Or they might want to raise the rent. Say you could stay, you can have a new lease if your rent will go up this much. Sometimes 10%, sometimes 12, up to 15% people can have their rents raised. So I got involved through GIA, a bunch of us got involved, especially with the Connecticut Tenants Union. Did you know there was a Connecticut Tenants Union? That's an amazing organization. Again, I was knocking on doors with them because I wanted to learn about them. I wanted to learn about the people that they were involved with. I decided to go to Manchester one day with them to knock on some doors. I knocked on the door, and the person who opened the door saw this woman who was in front of me, that Natalie, who was there working with it. And then she saw me and she said, "Pastor Bill?" And it's somebody that I hadn't seen because I hadn't served that congregation for about 20 years. And she went from being a little girl who saw me occasionally when I'd come back and guest preach to now being a young woman renting her with her own apartment with a friend of hers, who then was the amazing person in her building who got 4 or 5 other people. And we had Just Cause, which was to extend the rental support and protections that are had by people like me. If I was renting, I'm 68, if I was over 60, 2 years old, I would have rent support. If someone was on disability, they would have rent support protection that they couldn't, without cause, simply be asked to leave their apartment. We got all the way up. We literally passed in the House and in the Senate, but it did not get signed by the governor, nor did House Bill 5002, that was a big omnibus bill that also had some housing pieces in it. Because right now, fair housing isn't expedient. And the people that are on the other side of that issue, which are mostly landlords, I'm putting landlords down, they lobby harder. They have more money behind them. We don't have a lot of money. We have people power. And we did not get a win. You don't win everything. You don't go into the halls of power with a faith-based organization and win everything. You don't go in with kindness and compassion and humility and meekness and knock down the halls of power all the time. But I can tell you that you can make a difference when you organize people. You can make a difference when you open up your life to the people that you are organizing with, and you have that one-on-one relationship, conversation, and maybe see somebody that you haven't seen in a long time to get involved in the life of changing systemic issues, the root causes that hold people back from having liberation in their life, that we as Christian people believe that that is one of the things that God gave us as a gift. So I pray that you will think about being part of a core team, that you'll join Susan. She has just a couple more things that she wants to tell you about what's happening in your area to create this faith-based organization, and I hope that you'll think about, if not being part of the core team, supporting it as your congregation moves forward. Thanks for having me here today.
Just to give some people, we're going to have a Q&A. We're going to try to wrap this up because we know that usually we have a 12:30 stop time. Just to clarify here. We're going to talk a little bit about what's next in Southeast Connecticut. We're expanding the table, teaching and practicing the tools, participating in actions now, just like Bill said. People came out, turned on a dime because of these relationships for this action that in the front of the church where 500 people showed up in 3 days. It was simply because of the relationships that people had formed, and it was done by text. There was no Facebook or social media that went out to get people out. And then the plan for Southeast Connecticut is to officially launch in 2026. Now, the core team, we went to the deacons meeting this past month, gave a little presentation. They were very enthusiastic, and they're endorsing our participation in this community, Southeast Connecticut, faith-based community organization. It's a mouthful.
Doesn't have a name.
It does not have a name yet because the larger group, the core teams from different congregations are going to come together and create a name. Okay, specifically, and you can't read this, but you do have on your seats a piece in color about what's coming up. There's going to be an orientation on November 3rd. If you're interested, it's just to get an idea about this. Then later in November, on November 8th, and Sunday, November 9th, at Walls Clark Temple AME Zion Church in New London, there's going to be a fall leadership training. Now, Rick has taken it, I've taken it.
I think the important part here is if this really interests you and you would like to become part of the core group, I hope you could hear me. If you'd like to become part of the core group, this will give you the information as to what you need to do. Do we have a sign-up sheet?
On the back, we have it on the back table. There's 2 clipboards to sign up. Yep.
Right. So again, if you'd like to become part of the core group, sign up and look at this. This will tell you when some of the training is going to take place. We'd love for you to join us. As I said, there's just 5 of us, and we've got plenty more room. But you don't have to become part of the core group at all to participate. As we've done in the past, we'd like you to continue to participate in the one-on-ones, the Sacred Bowl meetings that we've had. And as we go along and as we start getting together, organizing these group meetings, we ask for your participation if it's something that you'd be interested in. And of course, the bottom line is, once we get going on this, we get some actions that need to be worked on, we will bring these to the congregation, and if it's something that you're passionate about, go out there and do it, you know. Again, you don't have to be part of the core group. If something comes up, act.
Do you want to say about anything else we can access you well?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
The training that you're talking about on the 8th and 9th, what is that, just briefly, what is that deal with?
It's the,
So there's basically 2 tools for this work. One is one-on-one, a one-on-one relationship. So remember when Steve had us all, everybody put into a bowl, you know, the name, and you said, yep, I'm happy to meet with somebody else. It's similar to that, where we continue that work. We meet one-on-one, we really listen to each other. There's some guidelines of questions to ask to facilitate the conversation. So that's beginning to do the work within the congregation, which has already started. And then the other is something called a group meeting or a house meeting. Now, the 5 of us have participated in this. We did this at Unitarian Church in New London. 83 people came from different congregations, and we were in small groups. And again, we had conversations about what keeps us up at night, what concerns us. And then from that, we walked back together into a large room, and each group shared sort of the things that came out of that. And we started to see themes that came out from all of the group. So, and then from that, the idea is, okay, which of these are actionable? Now, they won't be the same for every congregation because there's different issues for different congregations, but the movement is, and right now the timing is perfect, quite frankly, considering what's happening in the world. And a large portion of the people that showed up in New London were immigrants. They came expecting us to be taking action. What are we, you know, how are we taking action? So this dovetails into the work the church is already doing. It dovetails into convergence. So yeah, that's kind of a lot.
Can I just add one little
Yeah.
piece to it? So one of the things that we've been very cognizant of is we can't change these national issues that are going on. We can work within our place, and for you that would be some things that are happening in Southeastern Connecticut that really matter, and then in the state of Connecticut. Why did Pat Spear knock on your pastor's door? Because we found out that to really build strength in the state of Connecticut is we're going to have people, not only in Greater Hartford, but in Fairfield County, in Southeastern Connecticut, in Northeastern Connecticut, in Northwestern Connecticut, in order to actually have faith-based strength across the whole state. And then when we cut issues, and we talk to each other, and we say, what are people keeping them awake at night, or what do they really have on their hearts and their minds that they want to see change in the state of Connecticut, then we can match that up with legislation that's happening, like fair housing, or education, or health care, and all those kinds of things in the state of Connecticut, where we can actually talk to our legislatures, talk to the people of power, and get into the legislative, process and change some laws. GIA has been part of changing 3 laws since 2019. That might not sound like a lot, but it was an amazing experience each time. And we also whiffed on a few, And we also, put together a PTO and gave them help to get them power, and not only organized that one apartment building, but actually many apartment buildings in Greater Hartford. So that's just an example of how it works. So pass it back. Thanks for listening again.
So the key is what you're going to go forward is that actionable, that GIA and Hartford's interested in, and Southeast, you have to blend and have a commonality, right?
You have to think about that together. Although you might come up with an issue down here we don't know anything about.
Right.
And you might help us to get on board and connect that's in Fairfield County and the other places that we haven't even found. And the ACLU and Make the Way Connecticut and the gun lobbying organizations that are in Connecticut. The Moms Against, the PTOs, there's all kinds of organizations in Connecticut that we can partner with.
Great.
And there's also some other faith-based community organizations in Connecticut besides GIA. There's another one called Connect, which is Southwest Connecticut. And there's also a group forming in Northwest Connecticut, sort of like what we're doing down here. So the whole intent is for the entire state to be organized across faith-based organizations. Okay. Kathy, we're going to end it with this slide, and then if there's any more questions. Do you want to say anything?
I was not necessarily about convergence.
Oh, okay.
But I did want to make a comment on certainly the way fair rent commissions have been legislated. That's a tremendous win, if you will. I don't know if you had anything, either explicitly or implicitly to do with it, but they're actually working. I've seen them working in larger communities. So that's definitely a win. So your efforts have certainly moved the needle in a very positive direction in that area. So I'm co-chairing our convergence efforts with John Kiker, very involved with Greg Carlson, who has given some presentations here. So we're trying to figure out how this works into our strategic planning for convergence. So stay tuned on that. Yeah. Thank you. Susan.
Kathy.
I'll try to keep this real short. So, as first Steve, so see, you can have the closing prayer for us. The African proverb, if you...
Yeah, please take the mic, then people can hear you for sure.
Okay, sure. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So I have a little something that I have written, so please bear with me. If you want to go fast, go alone, suggest that an individual efforts can lead to quick results. If you want to go far, go together. This emphasizes that working together leads to lasting results.
Amen.
Before Steve prays us out, do people have any other questions, comments, concerns?
I can stick around for a few minutes too.
Okay, and if you're at all interested, even just interested in getting information, please sign up because we'll start
The
emailing.
QR code.
Yeah, yeah, so two things. We already have a community organizer who's been hired, not by us, from Southeast Connecticut, the Center for Justice, which is the overarching organization, the umbrella organization for GIA, and which the Southeast Connecticut group is going to be under, found money, sought money, got money for a community organizer. Her name is Amber Mose. She was supposed to be here today, but had car trouble, unfortunately. And this QR code will take you to the website on the Center for Justice website. And there's a tab that already speaks to the work for this area. So it's really helpful. All you do is take a picture of it with your phone, and it'll tap this. This one is for the training, okay? So
I'll show you how to do it afterwards if you're interested.
Yeah.
And you have a smartphone.
Thanks.
Well, I'll say a prayer to pray us out. I'll pray that, we can figure out how to use our technology to use these QR codes, but let's pray. God, for all of these wonderful efforts, for the work of relationship building, for the work of listening and storytelling, for the work of organizing with one another to produce systemic change. For all of this, we give thanks. We give thanks for the efforts of GIA. We give thanks for the efforts of all of those who are working here in Southeastern Connecticut. We give thanks for those from this congregation who have dedicated themselves to helping to launch this effort. For all of it, once again, we do give thanks, O God. Bless our efforts going forward. May we listen well. May we relate well. And may we learn to trust one another, hearing our own deep stories as we go about this work with one another. It is in your name that we pray all of these things, O Lord. Amen. Amen. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Susan.